He is so good. You know, I was just thinking some of the things you shared earlier, that first of all, that, teachers have a lapel and that the preachers have the wireless, but I have a earpiece. What does that make me? I know the positioning what it makes me, because you start with the best, and then you end with that person that's going to bring it home. The middle person, you just throw somebody in there because that, you just want to hope they can be consistent and make it happen. So that's all I got to deliver here today. I was a deputy sheriff for about 8 years, and during that tour, I worked in the county jail. And I came in one day, and it was just a normal, regular day. Things that kind of got hectic. Some things that happened in the shift before, so they kind of threw me, changed my location. I went back, and they said, "Hey, we got to take some of the prisoners out of visiting and take them back to their cell blocks." And so I went there to visiting, and I'm rounding up the guys that are there, and there's about 8 of them, and all of them are from one of our worst cell blocks. Every one of them is from a gang, have committed multiple murders, are there on trial for murder. So there's some serious guys. And so we're taking them, and if you've ever been to Alcatraz, the jail was very much like that. There was this series of areas you went through, but then you came into this very open area. And everyone from the prison can see you. It's just like a wall. And this is where the chow hall happened. And you have to walk them across from there to the other side. And as I'm walking across and I'm opening the doors, because I'm the deputy, I have the keys. I'm in charge. They're in jail. And as I'm walking across this open area, I hear a slam, I turn around, and before I know it, I'm encircled by the 8, and I've been taken prisoner. You never expect to be taken hostage in a jail. You've got the keys. And instantly, it broke into this Panama, and they've got knives, they've got other things going on. I just realized I am in a very chaotic, out of control situation. Now, to make things worse is as a deputy, you start counting, because we as senior pastors never count, but I'm thinking, there's 7 on duty in this entire prison. There are 300 inmates. 8 of them are around me. 2 can never leave the front desk for whatever reason. Now we're down to 5. One of them has to stay in the main area that's all locked up so he can push buttons and, is protected, and he can never step out. We're down to 4. I'm one of the 4. We're down to 3. And my mind is just kind of going through all this stuff, and it's in that moment God just speaks to me and says, "Trust me, I have a plan." I hope he has a plan, because the sergeant is brand new. He has no clue what he's doing. He's got riot gear out. He's got the glass things. He's ready to charge his 3 against the 8 out here. And I'm going to be the first one stabbed. I know that. That's the way this goes. None of us expect to be taken captive. When you look at all the ones that have taken captive and throughout this happened recently and all this stuff going, many of them were unaware and didn't expect that to happen. And one of the things that I've done is I've trained missionaries and trained other individuals. I worked with a group on what do you do when you're taken hostage? What do you do when you go through tough times? And I thought Tom did such a phenomenal job of just kind of explaining some of the mindset of, we're in a small church and you're counting people and every week you're saying, well, why didn't they come back? Don't they like us? What's going on? And what are we doing wrong? And then you've got your staff and saying are excited about what's happening. And then what are the results? What's happening? And all of that can take you hostage, can capture your mind, can have an impact on you. And you're taken captive by unforeseen circumstances. I didn't see that happening at all. You're taken captive by evil of a person. As Tom was sharing, a friend shares something and someone you trust, and they say some words, or you get an email or you get a comment at a door. You didn't expect that, and it hits you, and for days you're overwhelmed. Or simply a death, a wedding in your congregation because of the size. It takes captive. So whatever the agenda is for 2 months, it's almost like knocked off the tracks. Well, we're in the wedding, Pastor. We got this going on. We can't do this? No. We got the shower. We got this. And it's amazing what can happen to us. And simply the lack of awareness. That's the fill in there, right? That awareness. You're just not looking, you're just not seeing, you're just not anticipating. You're so busy, you're so caught up in what's going on, you don't see the trap that's being set up for you. And that can cause some trauma. You know, when you lose a large donor, that's difficulty. When your board gives you trouble and there's conflict and things going on, that's trouble. When you're in a financial crisis and you need $60,000, $10,000 immediately and you don't know what's going to happen. When there's manipulation, betrayal going on with friends and people around you. When there's an affair on your worship team and the person who was a part of that affair was your daughter-in-law, what do? When you have something happen and all of a sudden it's like a church split and everyone's going on. When you've been falsely accused. See, all the things I just talked about are things that I've faced. And I know if we were to sit out there and just talk with you and you were to share some of the things that you have faced, they'd be tough. It's easy, especially in a smaller church, for you to be taken hostage, taken captive, for you to be overwhelmed by what's going on. And that results in a feeling, I have no control. And so you begin to be reactive. Well, what's the next thing? Or how can I do this? Or maybe this person has a key. Maybe we can do this. And reactivity perpetuates this passivity. It's like, you're just in this routine. You're just trying to make it happen. You don't know what to do. Let's not make any decisions. Let's just hold. Let's just wait. And passivity causes us to feel stuck. And there is nothing worse than being in that trap. I don't care what number you are, of feeling you're stuck. What am I going to do? There's just no way out. I just don't see anything happening here. What's going on? And you're stuck. And the shock of what's happened, the shock of this person saying this or what's going on can create this inability to think. We're going to show a little video in a few minutes, but this one couple, when they were taken hostage, the wife began to be assaulted by one of the members that was taking her hostage, and he was in such shock about what was going on, he never even saw what was going on, though it was happening right in front of him. You can be so overwhelmed with what's going on, you just don't know how to respond and what to do and how to think. And then we have doubts. Oh man, how many doubts? Well, I should probably just turn to each other and just share your doubts. Look at somebody and just say, you got doubts? Just turn to them, you got some doubts? And you turn to them, you got some answers? You got some answers? We get into that place and our mind is just in this spin, and then it's like, is my lack of ambition a problem? Is ambition a problem? Do I have problems? Is there sin in my life? And so you've got this strong desire to make something to achieve, and that's God-given. Even when it takes great effort and focus and all that you have, all of us have a desire to achieve. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't have that desire. And God said, go out and subdue. We have that desire. It's put into us. We have that drive to contribute, to be part of the mission, to make people more than they are. And we want to do this, fill the earth and subdue. The problem is our guilt. Am I just dreaming too much? Am I just asking too much? Is that not humility? Or this is sin. We got to kill this. We can't have this in our life. And our minds are wrestling with so many things. As pastors, I can say something and you'll feel guilty. We just feel guilty. We know how to get people to feel guilty because we feel guilty about everything. Oh man, I didn't make it by. I got to go make that visit. Oh, I forgot to make this note. Oh, all right. We're never enough. And we always know that our to-do list is never done. And we're overwhelmed by all that's going on. And so the problem is with this guilt and all this stuff, we get to a place where we can kill things because, again, of this trauma, because of this resulting thing going on us. And we find ourselves waiting, sitting on a bench. And I think what you're going to hear, what's heard today is about your mind and your thinking process. And I know, because I've heard Carl speaking like that, he's just going to challenge you. What's the one thing you can do well? Stop being distracted. Start being overwhelmed. Start focusing and just seeing what you can do with that one thing. How can you, and here's the next word, gain influence. Avoid the consequences, but gain influence with the people you have, with the people in your life, where you are right now. How can you gain influence? Instead of being overwhelmed, how can we get behind the people that we have and move them forward, helping them to move ahead, to love your neighbor as yourself? And so because of this, we become unprepared. I ask so often, if you have a baptismal tank, when was the last time you emptied it out? Because there might be somebody that wants to get baptized. Do you have anything even prepared for the one person that could accept the Lord this week? We get into a place that we're unprepared or we're simply just unaware. And that's easy because of the business. If you're bivocational and you're working like I do and you're trying to make your income and then, you got things going on at the church and all that's going on, it's easy to just be unaware. Terry Anderson was driving to go play tennis. And each day, he was almost run off the road by a car. Never talked to anybody, never thought about it. At the exact same time, going the exact same route, that day, every time for 3 days, he went. And 3 days, they ran him off the road. And 3 days. And finally, they captured him and took him hostage. And he was hostage for 7 years. And so sometimes we can be taken hostage by a situation or circumstance, and it causes us to be so caught up into it for so long. And so then we have this fight or flight. So we're fighting people, we're angry with people, we're being aggressive, we're stepping back, or we just want to run, we want to disappear, we want to quit. We're overwhelmed. It's a natural response from us. And how do you deal with all this stuff that's going on in your mind? Because your mind can be overwhelming. It can deceive you with lies. Well, who are you? Are you anything special? Does God really care about you? What do you do? Especially when you've been counseling somebody for the longest time and now they don't want to go to your church and they want to move on, because they want to move on past their problems. Seems like the people we pour the most into, it's like, what am I doing? We can somehow get to a place where we feel we don't have authority. We don't have any power. We have nothing that we can do. We're not offering anything whatsoever. And boy, if our gumdrop gets picked at. You ever seen the thing from Shrek and they've got the gingerbread man on the torture thing and they're torturing him? I'll never, and they eat part of his arm. It doesn't matter, I'll never. And then they touch the gumdrop. No, not the gumdrop. See, each one of you have a gumdrop. It may be family, it may be something that's happened in your life. You've got a gumdrop. And when the enemy starts picking at the gumdrop, that's when you're undone. That's when you're overwhelmed. one Army man that was being tortured and going through things was doing fine until they said, you know, you do realize no one's making payments on your car. He had a brand new vet. And he gave up all the information immediately because that was his gumdrop. What's our gumdrop? What? Because we're unaware of that. What's the thing that can really affect us and really deal with us when we're in tough times? Our self-worth. You know, if I work harder, if I perform better, if I get people more to like me, if people are more on board, then I'm going to be more successful. And we're in that trap. Hopelessness encroaches. We have feelings of shame upon us. And are you getting depressed now? I don't. I'm getting depressed. God's answer to shame is regeneration. To change where we're at. Jesus Christ is enough. Turn to somebody and say that. And if Jesus Christ is in you and the Holy Spirit is in you, and if you're being led by him, if he's the one that said, you know, there's 12 hours in a day and he knows you can't complete everything, but just do the things I've asked you to do, then you're enough. Then you're enough. Turn one and say, you're enough. So inside, you have the most power. I don't know if you believe that or not. You have the most power. In spite of the trap of comparison and looking at sizes of the guilt and shame and inadequacy and the thinking that we have, in spite of all that's going on, you have the power. Do you guys have that video? I want to play that video, and I'll just set it up. It's of a missionary couple. They have gone on their anniversary, and all of a sudden, all this happens.
At the end of May 2001, American missionaries to the Philippines, Martin and Gracia Burnham, made the fateful decision to celebrate their 18th wedding anniversary in a secluded resort on the island of Palawan.
About 4 in the morning, there was pounding on the door, bang, 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 and at first I thought it was a drunk guard or something, and Martin kind of knew we were in trouble, and just as he got to the door, it burst open, and in came 3 guys with M16s, and I think one of them had a mask on.
The masked men were Abu Sayyaf, a militant Muslim terrorist group with ties to Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. Along with 20 other guests, the Burnhams were forced from their room at gunpoint and taken many miles across the open sea to the Muslim stronghold of Basilan. For more than a year, the Burnhams were constantly on the move, living in primitive conditions in the jungle, evading capture from the Philippine military under the total control of their captors.
They were the enemy, and we never forgot that they were the bad guys. But on the other hand, they were our family. They were the people that we lived with for a year and hiked with and starved with. And you got to know the personalities of the guys.
Throughout their captivity, the Burnhams had lived through 16 different gun battles between the Abu Sayyaf and the Philippine military. On the afternoon of June 7th, over a year since their abduction, the bullets erupted once more.
I dropped from the hammock, and before I even got to the ground, I was shot in the leg. And I kind of slid down the mountain. It was so steep. I slid down a little bit and came to rest beside Martin. And I looked over at him, and he was bleeding from his chest. During the gun battle, you know, the grenades were going off all around us and the shooting, but I just kept thinking every moment was my last moment. And sometime during that time, I just felt Martin's body just get real heavy, a heaviness.
Tragically, Martin was killed during the firefight. Gracia was rescued and returned home amidst a national spotlight.
Was there no way Gracia or Martin could escape?
Sean Hannity, welcome to the show. Good to have you. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Well, it started as a romantic getaway for Martin and Gracia Burnham, American missionaries working in the Philippines. But for her first case I'm interviewing, I want to thank her
for having the courage to be here today.
Gracia, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
The outpouring of support was beyond anything Gracia could have imagined. Gracia Burnham lived through a real nightmare of fear, captivity, physical trauma, and devastating loss. Yet she has survived the ordeal more convinced of God's grace than ever before. Gracia truly has lived in the presence of her enemies, and with God's help, has learned to fly again.
See, there's some things that have been learned about surviving hostage situation. And I think, what happens in a small church, and I want you to make sure I understand, I'm not saying anything's wrong because I'm in a small church, but it's constant trauma. It's constant attack. It's constant. It's just like, it doesn't seem like there's a let up. It's like, because you're always just on this precipice, and then all of a sudden you slip back, 2 steps ahead, 3 steps back, and it's like how you feel. And it's like that wearingness, if you continue to live in that, if you don't realize you can do something about that, that is what will overwhelm you and finally defeat you. See, I know many of you, if someone were to come in here and make a profession against Jesus Christ, you would die for that. But it's the daily little bites that are being taken out of you. That's where you go, I don't know if I'm willing to die for that. And so it can affect us mentally. And so the very first thing is, do you have a code? One of the things I discovered that was different from World War II and Vietnam is that in Vietnam, they hadn't been really taught the code. Now, in most movies, you hear the code. This is our code of honor, and never one gets left behind, and you don't give up information. All the different things. We seem to know the code, but it wasn't ingrained into what it is to do. No one expects you to survive torture forever, but just make sure that you don't give up information at the right time, and how you do this. And is there a code? Do you know your identity in Christ? See, all these missionaries they're taken hostage, they wrestle with the same things. Well, have I done something wrong? Is God not love me? Is what's going on? Why was I taken? Who am I? And we can ask a lot of bad questions because of that. Do you know you can ask good questions and bad questions? Why did my baby die? Our daughter died. Why? You can get an answer for that. That's not going to help your pain or hurt like that. We can ask a lot of bad questions and not get anywhere. When you ask a bad question, you get a bad answer. Does God love me? Okay, read the Bible again. Yes, he loves you. Am I doing something wrong? Well, you'll know that. Yeah. And so we can be taken in this code. Do you have a code? Of even when you take a day off, do you have a Sabbath? Sunday's not a Sabbath for you guys. I don't know about you. I just work extra that day because that's not my Sabbath. I have another day that's my Sabbath, and we have Sabbath in our staff, and we just know we don't call on certain days. Do you have a Sabbath? Because if you're not recharging, you're going to be in a trap. Then your role. What's your role? Know your role. When I'm a deputy sheriff, I have a role that I step into. All right? That doesn't work at home. Well, honey, what were you doing? What do you think about that? That's not, are you sure about that? That attitude isn't going to get me very far in my relation. My role's got to change there. So what is your role? It's not always the stern one, make it happen. When are you supposed to be the encourager? When are you supposed to be the mentor? When you supposed, think about the role of what you're doing, because it's important. You are in charge of you, write that. You are in charge of you and how you respond. Every year I talk to people when it comes to New Year's like that, pick one fruit of the Spirit and really work on that. Don't make some big resolution. Just pick one of the fruits of the Spirit and let that be your focus. I chose kindness this year. And so when you try and pick something out like that, you ask some people, well, what are some things you think I would need to grow in my life? Everyone kept saying kindness. I'm a nice guy. Look at me. I smile. Everyone knows it. What do you mean not kind? It's like even in my text, I always put great. Bouquets of flowers, of words. That's tough for me, That's not in my name. So I'm having to learn that kindness is just stopping for a minute and investing. And sometimes we aren't gaining influence and doing the things we do, and we're not, because we're just overwhelmed. And so we need to take charge of us. And, with all the problems that we have when it comes to people, and everything that happens, there is a definite desire that we feel that we're not in charge. Well, we're not. God is in charge. But you are in charge of you. I mean, we can get on a great gripe fest. I could probably spend 5 minutes letting you guys just gripe about people. What's your worst problem? Who's your worst problem? Who's the one that just, you've been telling this person for year after year, if you just stop this would change in your life. And they just keep on doing the same thing. We can talk about things that we have no control on, but how are you doing with you? How are you taking care of you? How are you growing you? How are you thriving? What are you doing? Even in a hostage situation, this is one of the things that they learn. What are routines? What are things we can do? When somebody tells us when we have to go to the bathroom, when we can eat or not eat, when we have to get up and go down, where we're going to stay, where we're not, when we're tramped around, we have nothing that personal of our own for a year. If they can do something, we can do something no matter where we're at, and we can learn to thrive. And as a result of that, they discovered some of the greatest tools is the fact that even though they have the guns, even though they have the weapons, even though they have the people, even though they have everything opposite of what the prisoners, the victims have, they, as a person, could determine their outcome. Determine how they were treated. Determine the respect. Have an impact more than anyone else on whether they lived or even whether they died. Tom Watson, IBM CEO, says, nothing so conclusively proves a man's ability to lead others as what he does on a day-to-day basis when leading himself. In your words, you lead. And the information you allow to be discussed, not be discussed, how do you discuss it? Now, constantly we have in our new members class and everything else, we talk about unity, we talk about gossip. Our people we just don't do that. Are we doing that? And then when it comes to another thing, what about blessing and cursing? It is so easy for us to compare and look at others and curse what we have. Doggone it, I wish I had an electric guitar. We need an electric guitar. I saw you had one today. We haven't had one in about 3 months. I really wish I had an electric guitar. When are we going to get an electric guitar? When are we going to get this? When is that sound person going to get things right? Get someone to wave at somebody at the front? Who in the heck can do that? How did you do that? And we can curse because when you're not satisfied, when you're comparing, you're growing weeds because you're cursing instead of blessing and saying, you know what, God, thank you for the people. Thank you for the heart. Thank you for what they're doing. Just going around to the nursery person and saying, I know no one's ever told you this, but I just really appreciate you. Maybe even going to the sound person and saying, the last 3 weeks we called you out in the middle of service and pointed you out. I don't think that was a good thing, but I'm going to try and change that. But here's the gift card, because I just appreciate what you do. The only time we know about the sound person is when you screw up. Our words, blessing, your actions. You always need to be looking for a way of escape. of change, of doing something that God has new ideas. It's not about trying to chase people down and do what they do. God has you and your talents and your abilities, and he's trying to show you what you've been called to and what you can do, what you bring. We're all here to win people to the Lord. We're all here to disciple people, but it will be different because God chose you and made you different, and the people he chose to make different, so there's going to be something different. What is it about that so you can major on that? All right? Are you growing? Besides preparing for Sunday sermon, are you doing anything to grow yourself? Are you connected? I hope one of the things that happens out of the day is that you discover different people that are near you that you can start spending time with and talking. Because there's a wealth of ideas, of encouragement, insight, resources, things that you could do together. There's all types of things that could happen if you connect. I know Jim Doman does Church United, and he is a big part of what we do in this area. And, being a part of that prayer group and enjoying that would be phenomenal for you because it just awakened a whole lot of life that we can do as a church together. But just relating and getting to know one. I know all the greatest things that happen in my life have come out of relationships. Who are you connected? Who would you call in a crisis? Who do you talk to when things are just not going right, or you just want to debrief with somebody? See, we as pastors, we walk on water, right? And if we come down any way off the podium, and people know our frailties and know our thinking, it's dangerous. But we can't even connect with other pastors? Well, no, because we're comparing ourselves. They got the electric guitar. And it's orange. Our signs are orange. I want to point that out to you. And I'm glad yours are blue. Connecting with one another, knowing one another, sharing with each other. Because we are part of the kingdom, as he so well put. The enemy wants to divide you. He wants to separate you. He wants you to be by yourself because then you're an easy target. Isn't that what we teach to everyone else? And didn't God live in unity? Father, Son, and Holy Spirit? How can we just be out there by ourselves? Do you know the need God created you to meet? Why don't you just focus on that? Because when you discover that, you release God's blessings. What's the need he made you to create? And that requires self-leadership. It means spending necessary time and effort to discover that personal vision, to figure it out. You've got to schedule some time. One of the greatest things that happened, you see, I was on a team, and we took a church from 300 to 3,000, and the church that we've been at, I've been at for the last 13 years, and we're still right about the numbers you are, about 160, in there average on a Sunday, and I was with my brother, and we were back when we were running 40, and we've been doing it 4 years. And I was sitting with my brother, and he started asking me some questions. The first question he asked, if you had money, and that was no issue, what would you choose to do with your time? What would you choose to do? Not feel you had to do. It's got to be done to. What would you choose to do? What really bothers me? What breaks my heart? Because each of us are different. Each of us are going to have certain things that we want to be leading in because that's what breaks our heart. What makes me pound the table in frustration or passion? That this is going on and this needs to change. What gives me life or makes me come alive? I know mentoring's part of that for me. But as we were in this car and I was trying to figure out what we're going to do next, and my brother had travels around a lot, and so he was driving from Lodi to from Southern California to Lodi and then back. So I said, I'll ride with you, and we did that. And he said, if money was an option, what would you do? And I started thinking about things I would do, and it's like I'd found that I got myself stuck. I was waiting because the location we were in was terrible. I'd have people standing outside the office arguing whether or not we were at church because of the name, Grace Christian Center. That was popular during the time, but people don't know what center is anymore. Is that a gym? Is that a, youth thing? What is that, We had 4,000 square feet on the bottom and another 2,000 upstairs, but it was all hidden away. But then you thought we only had like 300 feet. It was terrible. It was killing us. I knew we needed to relocate. Says if you'd stop waiting and if you could do it, what would you do? And for me, it was simply change the carpet. It was bad. I mean, there were big old runners and holes in it. I was not putting new carpet in a place I was leaving. But when that just struck me and I started that, God started us on a journey of a whole other things. And as a result, we started looking, maybe is there a place other than just renting and remodeling and throwing some money in? And God gave us a building and got us that direction because we started to think differently. That excellence, that simple. Not being overwhelmed, seeing things. You lead yourself. And so that began to happen. Luke 16:10, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. That's so huge. The small choices you make when no one else is looking, when it's just you and God, are what prove or disprove, and we always go, to God, to yourself. To yourself, your future abilities. And there's something about that when your mind is active and you're going there, that it changes what's going on in that environment. On the back, across the page. Release can be dangerous. When it comes to a point when a hostage has been negotiated and it's got a thing where they can be released, and that can be a very dangerous time. But you saw with Gracia and Marcia, as this army group was attacking him to capture them and to release them, he ends up dead. It can be very dangerous because dynamics change and people want to leave, and you're trying to balance everything and you're trying to figure out, but when you know what God has called you to do, listen to this one. When you know what God has asked you to do, He'll do the how. When you spend all the time working on the how, you will decide it's not possible and not do the what. So what has God made you to do? What has God called you to do? He'll show you how. He'll determine how, whether it's just with one person or it's a lot of people, just do what He's asked you to do. And in that process, we can get hung up because of the ups and downs of hope. Things look like they're going real good. Now they're going real bad. You're going to get let out, but it's been postponed. They didn't come up with the money. And as you're back and forth on this, it can be just so crushing on you because you're hoping and expecting, then it doesn't come out. And then repatriation. Once you get rescued, there's been a change and you've got some people working with you and you got some exciting, you finally get your electric guitar. It can get dangerous. Because you can expect too much, or you put unseen pressure on other people. Just all these little things that cause the wheels to come off what's going on. And how many marriages, when one gets saved and transformed and doing great, the other partner just goes off because they were holding everything together. There's a change in dynamics and things going on. Marcia's, for even to this day, one of the things that have to do, she'll go up to us, and those that have had her kind of know this, she says, tell me to go to the bathroom. Because she cannot go to the bathroom by herself unless she's instructed. And And so there are scars, there are wounds, there are things that we carry. And that repatriation coming together that can bring some questions. So 3 questions that you need to ask yourself. And these are questions that I want you to go to people around you. Members, some staff, some lay leaders, your wife, your husband. And ask these questions because they're questions for you. And the very first question is, what did I do over the past few years that inspired you? And you may find with me, I hug everyone, and it's my hugs that people remember, not my messages. I haven't worked that one out yet. What did I do that frustrated you? Because usually you find there's a theme. What do I not know about myself that's a blind spot? And you'll find enough stuff there just to kind of help you lead and get into a place, because that just brings the harmony that God was wanting. In Psalms 119 and Psalms 26, and it all talks about search me, make sure there's nothing in me. We know all of that, but it's just about, it's the small things. God, why am I cursing what you've given to me instead of just blessing? God, why am I comparing instead of just being? God, what is the thing that I can just take hold of today and God, just make me better at this because that's what you've made me to be. And let there be joy and let there be peace and let there just be a confidence in who you've made me. And then go all in. Commit to the ministry. Here's a question to ask yourself, because sometimes when we get in trauma, we kind of disengage because we're trying to protect ourselves. If you were to leave, would anyone be surprised? That was no surprise. If no one will be surprised, you haven't committed enough. There's something we're giving off, it's kind of sharing that, that's been a part of the scars and the wounds that are there. So commitment, and I want to share this, commitment and relationship, it goes both ways. You may have a lot of people that haven't committed to you and stuff like that. So you as the leader have to figure out how to make that happen instead of being angry at that. Or there are people that have done things like that. So it's a two-way street, but we always have to start with us and check that. And then Steve Covey says, you will see the world not as it is, but as we are, or as we have conditioned ourselves to see it. I would just ask that God would give all of us new eyes to seeing our church, our people, our gifts, our diamonds in the rough that cut us and wound us differently. That we see him as he has called us. Because your view is so important, and I wish I had more time to spend it. Your view reveals your trust in God, and it releases your hope, how you view. And so what is your view? Is there a trust in God? Because we find, I don't care who we are, there's a point we've come up to where we've kind of hit that wall, where it's our gumdrop, where it's something else that it's hard for us to believe that God really will love us and that God has just blessed us and we're being successful because we're pouring into the one person. Church I planted that failed, mine's still not going, it's gone. In Denver, one person that I know, there's several people got saved out of it, but this one person has already led 1,000 kids to the Lord. Who says I wasn't called for that person and to see his life transformed and changed again? Was it a success? Was it a failure? Cost a lot of money. Choosing positivity gives energy in your attitude. When you're positive and you're blessing, it changes your energy and your attitude. Humility towards your church and unity with your relationships. It was right after that meeting with my brother, I started saying something to our church that says, every week, I just want to thank you for letting me be your pastor. That hit such a chord. I have several people just come back and says, no, you need to know we thank you for being our pastor. And I'm not saying it so you can get the response, but it was something God just gave me. It says, guys, I just want you to know, genuinely, as we close, thank you for letting me be your pastor today. There's something that's released when you're positive. There's something that's released when you have that in your life. Your view affects your head, your heart, and your hands. So take some time to be a critical thinker. Take some time to even move some meetings, out of your schedule. Be the leader you want to be. Be that leader. And start today on doing it. Understand that a season of waiting is not you sitting on a bench. It's a time of preparation, of preparing, of seeking God, of learning and involved with people around. Moses had a time with Pharaoh. Joseph had a time with Potiphar. David under Saul. All of them had a waiting period, but it was a preparation period, and it wasn't wasted. Because sometimes we'll be stalled. There's nothing you can do when the ball stops moving. Okay, and that's the time that you're waiting. Okay, and figure out how to get the ball moving again. And so I just want to wrap up because my time's coming short with this. You have the power to change your view, your actions in the circumstance, because it's so easy to be worn down, overwhelmed, not feeling you're giving enough, and just a blessing, just an attitude of pouring back can add such words of and create such a bridge between you and others that's so powerful. So I want us to stand for a second. I like you to do what we as pastors don't like to do. And that's just kind of find 2 or 3 people and just put your hand on their shoulder, hold their hand, just kind of connect, just kind of form up real quick. Just do this with me. Now I want you to think of one thing that you would like to have God put a shoulder against that you're facing right now. I want you to think of that one thing. And what I want you to do is, so the person on your right and the person on your left, I just want you to begin to pray for that person right now. And as you think about the one thing, if you want to share it, you can. If not, just as long as you have it, and we're doing that. As ministers, as people that have the power of the gospel in us, I want you to release blessing upon them right now. Will you do that? So Lord, we pray for blessing in this person's life. A blessing of the word, a blessing of your love, a blessing of your help, a blessing of resources. Lord, I pray that you will bless them, that you'll give them a joy, that you'll give them a peace, that you give them a strength, that you give them creativity and insight. I ask that you bless them. Bless them in ways they never could imagine. Let a joy rise in them. Let a hope arise in them. Let a peace and a confidence about who you've made them to be and where they're at rise in them right now. Bless them. Cause them to sense you. Cause them to feel you. Refresh them. Let there be a release of stress and release of the problem and the things that they're focused against, the challenge that they're making. Let them know someone right now, Lord, is joining with them, is holding up their hands and praying for them. That blessing is being released. That power is being released. God, we just thank you for who you are. We thank you for what you're doing. We thank you for how you're ministering. We thank you for your Holy Spirit and how he guides, how he comforts, how he speaks. We thank you for your word and how it reveals and what it shows and how it brings faith. Lord, let us have your mind. Let us have your heart. Let us have your actions. And Lord, for those that need to be set free or just released from a situation or from a burden, release them now, God. Bless them with release. And Lord, we just thank you for that. God, we just thank you for that. In your precious name.
Amen. Can we give Pastor Randy a big hand? Thank you.